as people come in, I'll make a comment that one of the things we should be thinking about is what we're going to do after this conference is over. What are we going to do as a community? What are the sorts of actions that we can do as a community? We can certainly do wonderful things as individual researchers or even small teams of researchers, but what do we want to do as a community? We'll have a conversation a little bit tomorrow at the end of the conference. We won't talk a lot about it, but I would love to hear your ideas. I think we want to publish our peer-reviewed papers from this. I think we might want to form some kind of ideas about maybe fellowships. You know, could we implore our funding agencies to provide small amounts of monies? Can we even figure out how to form some sort of science steering committee that might advocate for the Congo on behalf of our many governments and many funding agencies? Just some thoughts, but let's put those in and we'll talk about them tomorrow.
Okay, welcome back everybody. Actually, I'm just waiting for Steven to enter the room. There he is. Okay, so maybe most of you are more thinking on the DOC content of various beers than the DOC content of the Congo River. So, well, Doug told me just not to take it too long, but just like half an hour. I put a couple of things together to fuel a little bit the discussion. Yeah, this is a small comment when I was looking to early this morning to the original paper of Alberto. Yeah, two things struck my mind, and that's first of all units, because we express things in teragrams carbon, but also in teragrams CO2 equivalents. That's obviously different, and in the CO2 equivalents also the methane is involved, so just we have to pay attention to that. And then there is the matter of scale, of course, because we talk about extrapolations of large areas, yeah? So this is my first thing to open the discussion. It's well, kicking into an open door, obviously, but we have this issue about a few or more point measurements, and then we need to upscale that to either the Kavut Central or the entire Congo Basin, yeah? And then we have this spatial temporal variability on dissolved CO2, dissolved methane, etc., and then how to come to the true value. I was also checking the poster of the Amazon Basin where they did a recalculation on their outgassing numbers, and the result is that if I remember well, the numbers are tripled now compared almost to the original numbers, yeah. And this reminded myself a long time ago, and then I stopped talking. I did a review on something different, on methane emissions from rice fields, yeah. And then you see it's also a matter of measuring methane emissions from a rice field and then simply multiplying with the surface area of rice fields, yeah. And then the more numbers that appeared in the scientific literature, the total estimates of teragram methane emitted from rice field, they were decreasing, just because, for the simple reason that more information became available and extrapolations became better. So, okay, this being said, anybody has something to say on this issue of upscaling versus spatiotemporal variability of CO2 methane outgassing? Yes.
Oh, I don't want to block you. Sorry. So that's a good start to call out units and scales. In the way that hypothesis was phrased in the opening in our charge documents, was teragrams carbon being that amount being greater than the Amazon per unit area.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a mass number, not a per unit area number.
Yes, exactly.
There, and as you accurately pointed out, the 480 is a combination of both CO2 and CO2 equivalents as methane. Need to separate those out. So I'm curious, and I guess I'd ask Stephen about this. So on your spatial upscaling part here, so you obviously have some pretty heroic measurements made in different places. But how does that get distributed, especially across floodplain waters and so forth? What's the aerial basis by which you multiply a specific measurement to get up to the 480?
Yeah, so obviously I don't know all the numbers top of my head, and it's Alberto who processed all the numbers. What I can tell you is, because I had to ask him for advice when I put together my slide and ask him to dig up a few numbers. I think they were in my slides also, but I went through them quite quickly. So for the river network itself, what he calculated is about 150 teragrams of carbon as CO2 per year, depending on which gas exchange coefficient you use. And the estimate for the Cuvette Centrale is actually twice that number, but that's obviously the most uncertain, because you suddenly extrapolate a handful of data over an area that is 360,000 kilometers. That's 10 times the size of our country. So yeah, that is by far the most uncertain component in this entire thing. Does that answer your question?
It's getting there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. But again, even, well, so the basic numbers, I think they're correct. The PCO2, the methane, and these numbers are correct. The spatial coverage is reasonable, but again, we're focusing for logistical reasons on that main artery of the basin and close to the confluences of the tributaries, and then a few bits and pieces here and there. The extent to which that is representative. Yeah. In the Amazon, probably the coverage is better. There's probably more data on the headwaters, and so it's better to, it's easier to incorporate that. Yeah, even the surface areas, there was that recent paper in Science, I think, that did the reanalysis of surface areas of rivers worldwide and came up with an estimate that is twice as high as the original estimate. Yeah, you work with the numbers that you get, and I think these numbers evolve and will continue to evolve in the future as more data, as we become more certain.
So for that reason, well, that will be towards the end. I took the liberty to also slightly change the hypothesis of what has been well, slightly, completely change it actually from what has been written here. Anybody else has to add something on that?
I'll just make a comment. I would like to know, you can say now if you like, or tell me later, does any team have a plan to go into the cuvette and spend time in the cuvette, not just on the rivers? Heroic work to do the wonderful work I've seen on the main stem and on the Ubangi and Kasai. It's beautiful work, I love it. Does anyone have a plan to go into the cuvette and spend time there measuring carbon, sediment, water levels, rainfall, anything like that?
I think there was a poster that said.
Yeah, there's two teams that plan to core there.
Core.
Yeah.
So I'm not a hydrologist, so I don't know what data we'll be collecting that will be of use to people, but we will be doing gas flux analysis from the wetlands, so not the rivers, and we'll also hopefully be putting in, we're going to have some permanent plots, probably be monitoring carbon cycling in the swamps, and we'll be putting in a weather station, which will be running for 2 years, collecting data. So I don't know if that's... So the weather station measures, I think, pretty much everything. So yeah, or rainfall, wind speeds, things like that.
Okay, good. then if I don't see a hand, I'll suggest we move to, which actually has been tackled already this morning. So we're talking about well, actually we have been just talking about the wetland component and what is the effect of what I call between quotes seasonal wetlands, which is then linked to this floodplain, river channel water exchange and the degree of evapotranspiration that obviously will have an effect on the amount of standing water in the cuvette centrale and the degree of well, how much wetlands there actually are. That's one thing. Then even more complicated, I think, what will be the future effect of if there is any changing precipitation or temperature increase on all of this, yeah? So it's well, maybe difficult to say anything meaningful about it if we hardly have any measurements yet from the cuvette centrale in terms of outgassing of CO2 and methane. But anyway, it is there, so the floor is open for some thoughts on that. We have to, well, Alain was mentioning it this morning already, so the hydrologist and the biogeochemist should join forces and set something up together. So Alain, maybe you have an idea on how to do that? Vous avez une idée, Alain, comment avancer pour travailler ensemble, les hydrologues et les biochemistes?
Simplement que j'ai pas de solution dans la poche comme ça, mais avec l'Internet, les géochimistes peuvent facilement identifier les hydrologues. Je viens de m'amuser à refaire le calcul des débits sur la période d'étude, là, de la présentation de Rob. Je ne mets pas du tout en question Rob il s'appelle
Rob Spencer, oui.
Oui, je ne mets pas du tout en doute la qualité des données de doc. Hein. Je répète, je ne suis pas spécialiste en la matière. Mais avec Jean-Pierre Briquet qui est là, on vient de refaire les calculs. Il y a 13% d'erreurs sur les débits, puisqu'à cette période, de 2009 à 2012, les débits étaient à peu près de 39 000. Donc c'est très très important de se rapprocher des gens qui ont la connaissance terrain dans leur discipline. Voilà, donc il y a, avec les réseaux Internet, il y a peut-être... moi j'invite Rob à se rapprocher des hydrologues qui connaissent le secteur. Hein, et puis au contraire, on est tout à fait ouvert pour croiser nos informations. Les informations de débit, ah oui, je tenais à le dire, hein, vous avez 3 chroniques, parce que vraiment la grosse préoccupation de tout le monde, c'est de trouver des données de débit relativement fiables. Alors, avec le professeur Guy Mokandi de l'université de Mariam Gouabi à Brazzaville, nous avons obtenu l'accord du directeur des voies navigables à Brazzaville qui gère les 3 stations les plus importantes en rive droite. Hein, il s'agit de Brazzaville, de Wesso sur la Sanga et de Bangui sur l'Ubangui. Et les données journalières de cote et de débit sont présentes sur le site ORE-IBAM qu'a présenté Guy Mokandi. Donc elles sont d'accès libre. Il faut simplement s'inscrire sur le site. Alors quand vous vous inscrivez sur le site, on va vous demander de vous identifier, donner votre nom, prénom, et le but de l'utilisation de ces données. Simplement parce que nous on fait des statistiques. Et en fonction des statistiques et de la consultation du site et de l'utilisation des données, eh bien, on peut obtenir la récurrence du financement qui nous permet de gérer ce site. Hein. C'est vraiment une activité philanthropique. On travaille pour collecter des données de la meilleure qualité possible pour la mettre à la disposition de la communauté scientifique internationale. Avec des financements de l'INSU, c'est l'Institut national des sciences de l'univers, qui dépend du CNRS en France. Voilà, donc sachez-le, vous pouvez télécharger donc, ces données et les utiliser pour vos calculs de flux et autres.
Ok, merci. Maybe to fuel a little bit the discussion, I add a final line here. So what about this? So we have been hearing a lot this morning on hydrological models with quite neat results, I would think. But there also, and we did not hear anything about it, there also exist biogeochemical models, like I mentioned one, DNDC, yeah, maybe somebody knows about it, yeah. So these are biogeochemical models that estimate methane, nitrous oxide, and CO2 fluxes, yeah. So they have been developed for different ecosystem types, for tropical forest, but also for wetlands, specifically to methane. So if I refer to the presentation given by Mr. Bates, I think, yeah, from the University of Bristol, yeah. So what about, it's becoming dangerous maybe, but what about linking hydrological models and biogeochemical models to get then like a modeled estimate of methane, CO2, and who knows, nitrous oxide emission from these wetlands? Can you comment on my idea, please?
It's a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, because these models have water stores in their grid cells and the fluxes between them.
Yeah.
It should be a relatively simple matter to hook those two things together, either in some kind of single system or as a kind of an offline coupling. So either of those will work. It's an obvious next step. So yeah, nice idea.
Okay. Somebody else has a view on that? No? All? Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. Some of the modeling challenges that I face, at least, is information on the functioning of natural lakes, wetlands, and how they interact. There is clearly some evidence, at least in the southeastern Congo, that the linkages between wetlands and lakes, they act as buffers. It creates a lag time between upstream and downstream rivers, at least by 1 or 2 months in one of the gauges that I observed. I have a presentation tomorrow. So in terms of getting the hydrology right, there are still information that we don't have, at least as far as I'm aware, with regards to storage, dynamics, how they change seasonally during rainy seasons and off seasons, how they link with the lakes and wetlands. So that kind of information needs to be collected and compiled so that that's available to improve the current knowledge of the hydrologic cycle in the Congo.
Okay, thank you very much.
So just to speak to some of the uncertainties we deal with in biogeochemical models, I mean, even in terms of carbon storage, between a series of 3 posters out there, you could see that the wetlands are storing carbon at different intervals at different times. So they're storing it for probably longer than we thought. Because of Greta's research, there's a lot more carbon stored than we ever thought. So I think before we model, we've got a ground truth, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think about future steps, it's about that pairing of weather stations, observations, and then paleo studies, not to be the guy here that's like, hey, you should all do that. But it is about that interdisciplinary collaboration that can really clarify what level of uncertainty we're dealing with, because it's not a sort of singular system, right? We're seeing considerable variability in the age, the storage time, and its potential release and vulnerability.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
I just wanted to follow up the point of the previous speaker on the impact of the wetlands on the hydrology and the routing. I don't know if Pierre, do you want to say something about your PhD research which touches on that, or do you want me to summarize it for you from what I know of what you're doing? Okay, so I will summarize Pierre's research.
Yeah.
Okay, Raphael, you'll do it better than I will.
Thank you very much. That is really a challenge that we have been facing in the Congo Basin when developing hydrological models. So it was really difficult to simulate the areas of wetland and the natural lakes, So what we did actually in previous model that we established for the basin is to create a wetland function, and that was actually a kind of mathematical approach because we didn't have the real data from the ground. But now the work that Pierre is using, is actually doing, is because through the Chrome project, we succeeded to implement some automatic water level instruments. So we are collecting hourly data, and those data are being used to establish the least flood model, and to use that hydrodynamic model, least flood model, to inform then our hydrological model. And actually, according to the experience of Pierre, he has got a poster there, he has got too much improvement on the modeling system, and it's actually the good approach, which is physically based approach. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So, if you don't mind, I would like to put up the second slide. Yeah, I did a bit of calculations, and I hope they were done right. If you look, so this is back to our hypothesis. Yeah, if you look for Africa, yeah, this paper from Panadol in 2011 states that the net ecosystem productivity, so that's how much carbon is gained into the forests in Africa, yeah, is, if you look to the numbers on the right, yeah, it's 510 to the 12th, so teragrams carbon per year, yeah. If I then add to that the DOC and the POC losses, which are like 14 teragrams, which is minor, but then if I add to that the data that Stephen presented today, which is roughly for the river network and the Cuvette Centrale together, more or less 500 teragrams of carbon, yeah? Then you, well, you can easily see that this outgassing is completely counteracting the net ecosystem productivity, yeah? Using this back of the envelope calculation. And by the way, the net ecosystem productivity of the Amazon is roughly is 3 times that of the Congo Basin, is 1.5 gigatons carbon per year, yeah? If then the recent data on the poster, it's also the outgassing is multiplied with a factor 3 roughly, yeah? So you could quickly say that the same holds true for the Amazon, that the outgassing is balancing out the net ecosystem productivity, yeah? So, that brought me to the what is written there in blue below, yeah. Given this fact, yeah, this simple calculations, and we have to be cautious. Is there still net climate mitigation potential for the Congo Basin? Yeah. So is this system really in a kind of equilibrium? So what comes in and what is sequestered in the form of NEP, so net ecosystem productivity in the forest. Well, the same amount is outgassed. I'm not speaking then about nitrous oxide emissions from terrestrial ecosystems, but Stephen told us that N2O from the aquatic system is low, but from terrestrial ecosystems is considerably high. Yeah? So, and then I don't know whether you are aware of this UN RED principle, yeah, this reducing emissions by avoiding deforestation and forest degradation. So is there still room for that, or we are talking nonsense? Yeah. To come to this is a kind of an advertisement maybe, but to come to this, I'm leading a project. We are building actually at the moment an ecovariance flux tower in the Congo Basin, and we will do a full greenhouse gas accounting, so we will measure CO2, N2O, and methane. Well, the tower will only be operational end of 2020, so, but that tower will be installed in Yangambi, which is a UNESCO Man and Biosphere Reserve. So, yeah, to end today, I wanted to present this, and I welcome, obviously, any thoughts. So, the floor is open for discussion.
Now we're getting to the really important part of this overall discussion of the linking of the hydrology and the carbon. Because as you just indicated, the amount of carbon, CO2 that we're talking about fluxing through the river system, broadly defined, is actually a pretty big number. And it starts approaching this whole business of what's the net ecosystem production.
Exactly.
Part of the reason I got on to this stuff in the Amazon in the first place is part of the LBA project, where the people running the eddy covariance towers were making various assumptions that, if you followed it out, meant that the biomass of the Amazon was going to double every 50 years. Remember those days? Yeah, you know, maybe not. And so that means you then have to start partitioning and looking at all the devil in the details and all those bits. So I think that a really exciting path forward for this overall group is to really very carefully parse out the different fluxes and put them together in terms of what it means for the overall carbon balance of the region, which will then address the red sort of issues, as well as just how does ecology work? Easier said than done, but one of the first steps in the how can the hydrology and biogeochemists talk together, but is continue the excellent work that's being done here on developing the water routing models, how much comes in from the channels, and then I'm still just grappling, trying to understand what the extent of the floodplain is within the Cuvette Centrale sort of areas. What is the water depths on that? And then what is the surface area? There's some of from the radars and so forth work at UCLA, Houston, and so forth. It doesn't look like the flooded extent is all that great. It's not as if the whole Cuvette Centrale is covered one big lake. But how much is covered? I mean, that's absolutely critical to sorting out what we're doing. And back on your idea of the coupled hydrology biogeochemistry model, especially if you can get the hydrology part of it right, that would be great. I think we've got a ways to go to be able to represent the carbon processing terms in that. And then there's several posters here that talk about the isotopic composition of the carbon and nitrogen fractions, Rob Spencer's talk, and so forth. That starts to open up a bit how we can think about the dynamics. One of the things that's been interesting to me here is that, very interesting, is that per unit biome type, the fluxes aren't all that different between the Amazon and here. A difference is that the region is not as well characterized. So a first step would be to get a more complete characterization of the different land types versus where the water is and all that, and then we can map, what goes on in the Amazon to those areas. That, I think, would be the basis of at least several interesting papers.
Yeah.
And then one last question for you on your covariance tower.
Yes.
What sort of environment is it over?
This is a typical mixed lowland evergreen forest. It's outside outside the swamp forest, yeah?
Yeah, because that's been one of the big issues with all the covariance towers in the Amazon, is that the calculations and assumptions made only cover about a kilometer footprint.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
completely miss the...
Yeah. This will be for a specific lowland mixed forest ecosystem.
Extremely valuable thing to do,
yeah,
but needs to go
we need
into the community beyond that.
Yeah. More towers the better, but not.
Yeah. And who's going to fund it?
Yeah.
It's funded already. The one tower, yeah. Anybody else want to add something?
I would like just to make an observation from what we saw from the ground, based on the field work we did last year. It was in summer. So this is actually a phenomenon that we didn't know previously. And I remember when I first established my hydrological model for the basin, I considered the Lake Tumba catchment, that it was directly pouring the water into the main channel. Okay, then through the Chrome project, we decided to go and to install a water level logger at the outlet of that place, that catchment. So, but then when we went to the field, we found out that there was a kind of reverse situation. The place where we wanted to install the water level logger, we found out that the water was coming from the main channel, filling in the Lake Tumba. So people who are familiar with the area, even through modeling, they can actually realize what I'm saying. So water was actually having a reverse flow direction, leaving the main channel, going to Lake Tumba. And then we start following the sense of the direction of flow. We found out that it was still continuing until it was reaching Lake Tumba. So we had then to get information from people living in the area. So they explained us the situation that, okay, during August up to December, something like that, water is leaving the main channel, filling up the Lake Tumba. And after December, water then is having another direction, is leaving then the Lake Tumba, coming back into the main channel. So this actually, it provided us another knowledge of the exchange between the main channel and Lake Tumba. And this is actually very good knowledge that we can use to establish our model in the basin. It was just an observation.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So Doug was showing me his cell phone indicating beer o'clock time. So with this, I would like to close the session and thank you for your input. See you tomorrow morning.